Hallelujah. Good evening, good morning, good night, good afternoon, wherever you are, whoever you are. Welcome to the channel Voice in the Wilderness. Welcome back. Today we're gonna follow up our previous studies that we've been doing. We talk about, I think the last study we did take a break, a 2-week break. But the last study we did, we talked about love. We talked about that word. We talked about that. It's not an emotion. We talked about all the things that are linked with that word. And even though the word is not an emotion, the word love can evoke emotion. It comes with emotion. It's not, in essence, an emotional word, right? But the things that are attached to that word can be transformative, if you will, can be emotional. It can be passionate. It can be drab. It can evoke an array of emotions. And as I was saying back then in that study, most people, when they think about love, they only see love in a certain way. It's in relationship between a man and a woman. It's physical relationship between a man and a woman. Those kinds of things. A relationship between parents and child. Neighbors, neighborhoods, families, and so on. They don't see love in mundane things, like we talked about the creation, right? In Genesis 1. They don't see love when we talk about how God looked down at the nothingness. Everything was just a lump of flour, a lump of dough, if you will. There was no form, there was no semblance, there was nothing to it. It was just a big old lump of dough. Like you take flour and salt and water and you mix it up and you make it into a ball and you just left it. It's nothing. It can be turned. It can be made into bread or cake or whatever it is you're making. But in that initial stage, it's a lump. It's nothing. And God began to fashion the universe, if you will, out of this lump of nothingness. Most people can't see the word love in that. You see what I'm saying? Because it's so much related to relationships and physical contact and with 2 people or 3 people or 4 people, as the case might be, with families and with communities, right? But and so we have to understand that from the biblical perspective, from the biblical narrative, every time you read something in the Bible, every time you read something according to the biblical narrative, you have to factor this idea of love in it. Why? Because God is love. And everything he does is from the standpoint of love. Even though it may not look right, it may not appear right, it may not feel right, if he is reprimanding us, if he is rebuking us. A rebuke is not, it doesn't feel nice. When a parent is reprimanding their children, for the child, it doesn't feel right. My butt is on fire because you spanked me 2-3 times. That doesn't feel like love. But it is. Right? And we talked about that at length in that study, and you can go back into the teachings we have done and listen to it. And today, coming off of this break, at that time we were into Yom Kippur, we were into Feast of Tabernacles, and we just finished the Feast of Tabernacles, and so that that was all involved in the break that we took. But coming back from that study about love, if you love me, what do you see? If you love me, when you read about God, the written word, the written narrative, what do you see? Do you see love? Do you appreciate that this is a love book? This is a book about someone who is emanating love in every facet of their being. Right? Today we want to talk about the heart. We want to talk about matters of the heart. And in today I thought it appropriate, because we're going to be talking about matters of the heart, to start at a place from God's perspective, right? We always want to get God's perspective on things. Listen, we're going to say some things today that you may or may not agree with. We have said things in the past that you may or may not agree with. That's not really the important thing. The important thing is, one, do you believe there is a God? Because a lot of people do not. Okay? A lot of people don't believe there is a God. And a lot of people who say they believe there is a God, if you listen to the things they say and if you watch how they act, the things they say and the things they do not equate that belief. It doesn't bring that belief into perspective. Okay? People say they believe God, but then they say all kinds of things that, wait a minute, God, that, no. That ain't near who God is, you know. And the things they do, no, that's nowhere near the things God encourages us to do. So, it's amazing, right? And one of the things that breaks my heart really is first things is, if I do something stupid, if I do something that is not according to the will of God, if you sin or you do something that you do something that's not right in terms of how God expects, what God expects from you, that breaks my heart. Then the other thing is when you hear people, right? Listen, look out into the world. I don't like to listen to the news. I don't like to listen to the news. None of the news stations, I don't like to listen to them. But when I do listen sometimes, it breaks my heart to hear the kinds of things that I'm hearing. Things that are, they're not stupid. They are ignorant in its base form. Ignorance in its very core. Ignorant. Okay? And some of these things are said by people in power, people in positions of power, people in positions of influence. Okay? People on the news media, people who in Congress, people who in presidents and leaders of nations say some ignorant things and some of the most arrogant things. And as I was telling a friend of mine recently, listen, if you think there are no repercussions to the things that you say or do that's not according to the will of God, that's not according to how God wants you to be, or things that you should say, if you operate with a mentality, with a perception, that's a word I love to use, that there are not you don't want to have any repercussions, you are sadly mistaken. Whether you believe that or not, you are sadly mistaken. Okay? And so people say some things and it breaks my heart because one of the first questions I ask is, Does this person believe there is a God? Does this person believe that when they go on the national TV, the prophet on the wall in your rooms at your house, and they say things through interviews and for national media and so on, do they really think that God didn't hear what they say? Do they really think that God is not aware of what they are saying and aware of what they are propagating and aware of what they are instigating? That's a sad place to be. In one place in the Gospels, Yeshua says, it is better that you fall on the rock. Right? It is better that you fall on the rock than to let the rock fall on you. Okay? It is better. If you fall on the rock, you might get hurt, you might get bruised. Chances are something is going to happen to break your fall, right? If the rock falls on you, you have less of a chance to alter the trajectory of that rock. Right? And you could imagine you walking through the path somewhere, and there's a rock, a big old rock in your way, and you trying to walk over the rock or something, and you slip and fall. You stick your hand out, save your face or whatever. Right? You might get hurt, you might get bruised or something, you might get caught, you might have to take it to the emergency room or whatever. Chances are you might survive because you fell on the rock. Imagine that big old boulder falling down, coming from the hip, falling down and falling on you. You putting up your hand like that ain't gonna stop that rock from crushing you. Okay? So, we have to be careful. We are living in exciting, diabolically dangerous, deadly dangerous times. Diabolically, again, deceitful and deceiving times. Okay? People are deceived beyond limits, and the people who are deceived, right, perpetrate that deception and cause people to believe the things that they are hearing. Scientists, believe the science, you hear that? Believe the science? Well, if more than 90% of the scientists in the world do not believe in a creator, do not believe in God the creator, how am I to believe what they're saying? I have to sift through all the stuff they're saying and pick, just like I do with Paul the apostle, just like I do with any other person, just like I do with the pastor, the preacher, the prophet, just like I do with everybody. I have to sift through everything whatever anybody is saying, because of the height of deception that's in the world today. So let's get back to this topic, matters of the heart. What's in your heart? Where do you stand? Do you believe that there is a creator? Do you believe the creator is interested in what's going on? Do you believe that the creator who created everything is even aware of what's going on? A lot of people, by their actions and by the things they say, they tell you where they are. And we're going to talk about all of that in the written narrative. Okay? But let us start this session in First Samuel chapter 16. Okay? First Samuel chapter 16 is a chapter, and I just want to lay the foundation after, my opening rant. I want to lay this foundation of matters of the heart. And who is more focused or most focused on this idea that everything about you, about him, is about what's in the heart. And we're going to look at this chapter dealing with King Saul, dealing with David, who was anointed to replace Saul. And we're going to deal with this idea of God, the creator of all things and the creator of all humanity, how he looks on. What does he focus on? Does he focus on your money? How much houses you have? How much money you have? Does he focus on the good things that you do? Does he focus on the bad things that you do? What is his focus? Where is he looking when he looks at you? When he thinks about you? We did a study called What is Man? If you go back into the channel and listen to those, we did I can't even remember how many parts of that. What is man? And we talked about the fact that this question was asked by David, the same David we're going to talk about here. This question was asked by this man. He asked the question to God, what is this human being? Who is this human being that you created? Who is this human being that you are so fixated on? God is fixated on humanity. He is. Because he created humanity. And as I was telling my friend, she asked, what makes us more important, or what makes us I think it was more important, she asked. More important than the animals. What makes us more, what makes us above, animals and trees and plants and so on? I said, because that's how God created it. He created everything for us. So we are more important. Even Yeshua in the gospel says, God knows every bird that falls to the ground and dies. He knows everything. He knows when the smallest of living creatures die. He's aware of that. But he also knows the very number of hairs that's on the top of our head. You see, I don't have another hair on my head. But guess what? God knows how many grains of hair on my head. He knows how much I've lost. He knows how much turned gray. Right? He knows. It don't matter if I shave it off on the side and clean it down to my skull. He still knows. Why? Because he is God. I'm not. Right? We are. Look out. Look at the world. We human beings are the epitome of his creation. We are the top of creation. We are the most important thing in his creation. We are not the only important thing, but we are the most important thing. And he wants us, as the most important, to take care of everything else. Right? Not to perverse things and put things out of order. And all of a sudden, we put ourselves at the bottom and then put the animals on top. Or vice versa. We on top. Go back and read the Genesis account. Go back and listen to the teaching about when he created man and put man in the garden. What was the instruction given to the man? The man is to serve to take care of and to serve, which is kind of like just like you go to the restaurant for dinner with your family or yourself or with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your wife or whomever. And you sit down and the person comes to you and says, good afternoon, how you guys doing today? Here's this is the menu that we have. Would you like something to drink as you go over your menu? They are serving you. They are there to take care of you while you are there. So if they come and just throw the menus at you and just bring you water or bring you they bring you a beer or a glass of wine or a glass of lemonade or fruit punch or soda and you didn't ask for it, they just decide to bring you stuff. That's not service. So we are the top. We are the elite in the universe. We are ourselves are not gods or God, but we are commanded, we are given the authority to take care of, to be, what's the word? Oh gosh, I can't think of the word right now. But take care of things in His stead, on His behalf. You know what I'm talking about. I can't think of the word right now, but you know what I'm talking about. And God knows. God knows who you are, man. Lady, girl, boy. God knows who you are. God knows what your name is too. Oh yeah, He knows. Don't think He doesn't. So, 1 Samuel 16, are you there yet? We're going to read from 1 Samuel 16. We're gonna discuss some things. As I said before, 1 Samuel 16 talks about Saul and David and that dynamic of what happened with Saul. Everybody, Saul was a king. He was a reigning king at the time. King. He was king of Israel. Okay? He was a king. A president. A leader, a political leader. He was in charge of the nation. Right? And as the Proverbs say, blessed is the nation whose God is Jehovah. Whose God is the Lord. Blessed is that nation whose God is the Lord. How are you determining? How is that nation determined? By how they proceed with their laws and policies, how the leaders proceed with their leadership, how they're leading the nation, what they say, what they do, the laws they implement, and so on. That's how a nation is determined to be following Jehovah or to be following their own way. We also talk about, in times past, in previous studies, we talked about the fact that if your ways please Jehovah, if your ways, this goes to the individual person and spreads abroad on the national level. If your ways please Jehovah, He will make even your enemies be at peace with you. So if your nation's ways please Jehovah, even your nation's enemies will be at peace with you. If you as a person, if your ways please Him, He will make your enemies, or those who don't like you for whatever the reason, He will make those enemies be at peace with you. But where is your heart in all of this? Are you even thinking about God in your actions, in your words, and when you talk to your co-workers or your family or your neighbors, or when you talk to people that you deal with on a daily basis? Right? You might be the owner of a company. How do you treat your employees? How do you talk to your employees? right? You might be a president of a nation. How do you talk to, how do you display yourself? Does your ways please Jehovah? Do you even believe in God? Do you even believe in Jehovah? Are you there? 1 Samuel 16. Let's read from verse 1. Okay. Jehovah said to Samuel the prophet, how long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Listen. The written narrative, the biblical narrative says that God is the one who brings a person up and who brings a person down. So people, even if they're voted in, God assumes that responsibility, okay, of bringing that person up and bringing that person down. It's his will. It's his hand in that. And here in this opening verse, Samuel, as we know, if we are familiar with the story, Samuel did anoint Saul as king in previous chapters, and Saul was ruling, and Saul started to deviate, started to do his own thing, to the point where God is now saying, before this, as a matter of fact, Samuel was grieved. He was heartbroken, like in my opening statements. That's what I said. It breaks my heart. Right? Samuel was going through that experience. His heart was broken because he anointed Saul as king. And now he's looking at Saul. He's seeing Saul's actions. And he's realizing, wait a second, this is ungodly action, Saul. What are you doing? And his heart is being broken because here is the king of a nation doing his own thing. Okay? And so Samuel is grieving. The word used here is mourning. But mourning, the English word to mourn is more used when after somebody died. Saul isn't physically dead yet, so he's not really mourning. He's like heartbroken. You see what I'm saying? He's heartbroken because of the action Saul is being involved in. His heart is turned. He's now doing things that's opposite to what he was supposed to be doing things that he's not supposed to be doing. He's operating against the will of God. Okay? And God came to Samuel, see his grief, came to him and says, how long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Oh, this is a heartbreaking story, because if you think about this for a second, God rejects you. God forbid, right? I can't even fathom to think about if God wakes me up in the middle of the night or whatever, the time of the day or whatever, and says to me, Keith, I reject you. That is like a death sentence. Not like a death sentence. That is a death sentence. For God to just flat out reject you. I don't think that's the worst. I think that's the worst place any human being could find themselves in. Do you even care that you might find yourself in that position? That somebody you know might be in that position. It's sad, right? So he's telling Samuel, how long will you mourn? Come on, man. Get off of that. Stop feeling sorry for Saul. Because I have rejected him. And then he goes on to say, fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided a king for myself among his sons. Now, I don't know if Samuel knows who Jesse is. from what God is saying to him, it's maybe Samuel does know who Jesse is. Does Samuel know all of Jesse's sons? I don't know. On a personal level, we don't know, right? But we know the instructions is, fill your horn with oil. I'm going to send you to this Bethlehemite called Jesse. You're going to go there. He has some sons. And you're going to anoint one of them as the next king. Wait a second. We already in a king here. We already have a king on the throne. We already have a president. What you mean anointing somebody else as president? What's going on? But that's how God is. That's how God operates. He knows everybody. He sees everything. He knows exactly what Biden will do. He knows exactly what's in Biden's heart. He don't care. He gives you an opportunity to act, for you to show what's in your heart. And when you expose yourself, he either elevates you more or he brings you down. This is God. Okay? He rejected Saul and he's now given Samuel permission to go and anoint somebody in his place. So Samuel responds in verse 2. Samuel said, how can I go? If Saul hears it, he will kill me. He's the king. He is the king currently, presently, sitting on the throne. How could you send me to anoint somebody who's going to be king? We already have a king. If this man, this king, remember, if you go listen to my teaching, The Law of the King. And what the king, this idea that the king is the king and what he says goes, right? And how a king can operate as a law unto himself because he is what? King. But remember, if you're a human king, you're just a part-time king. Okay? If you're a human king, you're just a part-time king. You have a part-time job. And it's how you perform in that part-time job will determine how long you keep performing in that part-time job. Okay? So, here it is. Samuel is making his point. Listen, man, you said me to anoint somebody else king. If this current king hears that, I'm a dead man. And he's a prophet. And he understands how how it works. But look who he's talking to, though. He's talking to God, the King of Kings. Right? And so God says, in following that sentence, take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to Jehovah. So, you see, God is setting them up, right? Get your horn full of oil and go to this house. I'm going to cause you to anoint somebody to replace this current king, right? This is a personal conversation. We get an insight into a personal conversation. And so Samuel comes back. Well, wait a second. If I go in here, this king hears about it. I'm going to anoint somebody. My life is in danger. God said, don't worry, I got you covered. Take a heifer with you. So your horn full of oil and a heifer and say, I'm going to sacrifice to Jehovah. You see the kind of God we serve? He covers listen. He sets you up and he has you covered on all sides. Okay? He has you covered on all sides. He goes on, call Jesse to the sacrifice. And I will show you what to do. You shall anoint to me him whom I name to you. So here we have this idea. We're talking about matters of the heart, right? We're talking about what's in the heart. And we are talking about that perspective, that topic from God's perspective. What God is looking at, right? From the eye of the beholder, if you will. You know, they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? And, you know, we hear that, and that's a true saying because If I look at a girl and I think she's beautiful, and I say to her, you're a beautiful woman or girl or whatever, and the girl who sees herself in the mirror every day thinks she's ugly, right? She'd be like, are you crazy, boy? I'm an ugly girl. I'm an ugly woman. And so the idea is, wait, babe, you're not ugly. Who told you that? I'm telling you, I'm looking at you. So beauty is what I see, not from what you see. Because I'm the one looking. Yeah, you're looking, but your vision is clouded because you're looking at your own self. See what I'm saying? Our vision is clouded when we look at ourselves. But when we see ourselves through the eyes of God, then we can see clearly if we understand how God sees things. And that's what we're dealing with here. So, he says, you shall anoint to me whom I name to you. So, Samuel is doing the work, but God is doing the choosing. He is making the choice. So, it's his choice. We vote, the votes are counted, and God makes his choice. So, whatever we vote, who didn't go, who didn't vote, when all of that is said and done, the one that comes out as the winner, no, it is not the one that is cheated, is the one God wants there at the moment. Okay? So, he says, verse 4, 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 4. Samuel did what Jehovah spoke and came to Bethlehem. And the elders of the city came to meet him trembling and said, do you come peaceably? Now, this topic, listen, the one thing I know about the written narrative of the word is you come with a topic, and let me tell you something. When you begin to read, this word is so real, it's so rich, it's so powerful. It teaches you so much. And that's why I encourage people to read. Don't stop listening to the preacher. Silence the preacher's voice. Go read these things for yourself. And let the word speak to you. Okay? Listen to this statement. I'm going to read it again. Samuel did what Jehovah said and went to Bethlehem. And the elders of the city, the leaders of the city of Bethlehem, came to meet him, trembling, and asked the question, do you come peaceably? What was Samuel's reputation, people? These are leaders in the city coming to ask the prophet if he comes in peace. And they didn't come like, hey, yo, what you doing up in here? You come peaceably, because if you're not, man, we fitting to throw down. No, they ain't come like that. They come knowing this man's reputation. They come with the perception this man is a man who operates, who works for God. And they come to him with that in mind. So it's not he they are fearing God. Because now they are concerned about what did we do wrong? Oh God, what happened? What did we do that this man of God is coming to us? And they're asking him, in essence, asking God, are we good? are we cool? You know, like, are we cool? Bro, we cool? And Samuel answers peaceably. He said, I come in peace. Hold your horses, bro. Stop acting like that. We ain't going down like that. I come in peace. I have come to sacrifice to Jehovah. sanctify yourselves and come to me to the sacrifice. Or come with me, to the sacrifice. And he sanctified Jesse and his sons and called them to the sacrifice. Verse 6. When they had come, he looked at Eliab and said, surely the Lord's anointed is before him. Surely the Lord's anointed is before him. Now, if we read that sentence the way it's written, he said the Lord's anointed is before him. Talking about himself, before him, right? Could it also mean that the Lord's anointing is before the Lord, right? But regardless sometimes of how you read it, it's kind of inadvertently says the same thing, right? So you could read that word, that hymn, it could be read in two ways. And in one case, the Lord's anointed is before him, Samuel, or the Lord's anointed is before him, Jehovah, right? Verse 7, but Jehovah said to Samuel, don't look on his face or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. Right? And we get into the meat of what I want to get into, but I want to kind of dwell on these words there for a few minutes. He says, don't look at his face or on the height of his stature. Don't look at what you see on the outside. Sometimes, and it happens even now, even today, when you look at certain politicians, right? You look at them, and just by seeing them, their appearance, you can immediately begin to develop perceptions, right? There was one leader that I had a distinct feeling that this person was not what they seem, because they seem all cool and charming and sweet and nice, but on closer observation, I never met this person face to face, but over the the prophet on the wall and over the phone, not the phone like on video, right? Or on tablet or on computer, seeing the person. Sometimes the video camera goes up to the person while they're talking and so on and so on. And I always used to say this, something ain't right. Something about this leader. He was a popular leader, world nation leader. Something ain't right. Something that just wasn't sitting well with me and this person. The person would talk very charming, very, very, very charming person. Well loved, well liked, right? Thought highly of. But this person, from when I see them, there was a something about the look that something about their face gave me at least the impression that something wasn't right. This person was very deceptive, right? And it turned out to be very true. Turned out to be very, very, very true. If I call the name of the person, you ain't gonna like me. But truth is truth, and you can't change that, right? Nonetheless, so a lot of times, that's how we are. We look at, I'm a guy, right? And, you look at a girl, you're interested in, you see, oh, beautiful. Nice size, nice shape, nice height, whatever you look at. And you just get, mushy inside. You're like, yeah, that's a nice girl. But because you only seen outwardly. You only seen outwardly, right? You look at somebody else and you be like, ooh, nah. Because we look outwardly, right? But the same nice girl that you see, this beauty, top of the line beauty in all forms and fashions, her mind might be bad. Cussing and smoking and drinking and might be completely opposite of what she looked like, what she appeared to be, right? And so we as human beings, we get caught up in the outward appearance, what somebody looks like outwardly, right? Or we hear them talk, and we start to develop ideas of we match how they sound with what they say with how they look, and we say like, whoa, that person is an awesome person. But some people, you can do that. Some people, that's just what you get. And the majority of people looking at that person will get that, right? And, in other cases, you can, wait, mash your brakes, tip your brakes. That's why you can't look at somebody from the outward and make any kind of a judgment call, if you will, right? You have to give time. You have to observe that person over time and make what one of my mentors at one time calls observational criticisms. Critique what you observe, things that you observe the person saying or doing, as the case might be, how they are, to determine what, how you would put what caliber, what class that person would be in. Not upper class, lower class, medium, not that kind of class is what I'm talking. I'm talking about quality of a person, right? Samuel is looking at the person, Eliab, and Samuel is thinking, wow, this looks like the Lord's anointed. This is the person. It looks like this is the person God wants me to anoint. But God said, oh, okay, don't look at his face. Don't look at his outward appearance. Don't look at his height and his stature. Maybe he was tall and dark and handsome. You hear that. You hear those terms a lot when you're trying to describe somebody that's scrumptious, somebody that's delectable, and whether it's a male or female, right? No, not because the person is tall, dark, and handsome. He is, qualified, if you will. God goes on to say, because I have rejected him, we in verse 7, midway in verse 7. For I don't see as man sees, or I don't look as man looks, okay? I don't perceive as mankind perceives. Remember, over in Isaiah, he says, my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. Just as the heavens is higher than the earth, that's my thoughts and ways compared to your thoughts and ways, right? He is not putting us down. He's not rebuking us. He's letting us know, wait a second, what you think might be superior or supreme or might be worthy of anointed is not what I might think. So we have to get his perspective. We don't have a choice in the matter, really, because if we keep following our perception, we will keep misleading ourselves, deceiving ourselves, and thereby misleading other people and deceiving other people. And we don't want that, okay? We want to see things the way God sees things. So God says here, don't look at his face. Don't look at his countenance. Don't look at his outward appearance. Don't look at his height and his muscular statuesque figure. Don't look at none of that. Right? How nice his suit. He have on a nice three-piece suit and it fits him perfectly and it lays like Steve Harvey. No. Don't look at that. That's not what I look at. I do not look the way man looks at things. I don't see things the way mankind sees things. Right? And that's why I brought in that verse in Isaiah, because that verse in Isaiah will fit right in there. He could have said that to Samuel too. For my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts, Samuel. So don't let his looks fool you. You know what I'm saying? We used to hear that a lot growing up. You know, don't let that girl looks fool you, my Keith. Don't let her looks fool you. She bad. That girl ain't nice at all. You see what I'm saying? That's when you have grandmas and granddads looking out for you. Okay? So, he says, I don't see as man sees. Because man looks at the outward appearance, but Jehovah looks at his heart. Right? We, mankind, look outwardly at the physical things. The eyes, the nose, the mouth, big mouth, small mouth, little nose. You know, we look at all that things. Right? You hear women saying they like, you know, men who have, you know, big size men, you know, down there. Right? Because they're looking at the outward. Again, right? You hear people say that, well, you know, big is always better and all that kind of foolishness. That's how we think. That's a human for you. Okay? He doesn't want us to see things from that perspective. He wants us to tap into him to get his perspective. Because just like you like size, when you get size, it mightn't be enjoyable. It mightn't be as fun. It mightn't be as glorious as you think it is. Okay? Might be worse. Might be something that you will never ever want. And then you end up in doing things that you don't want to do. Right? So, when you hold fast to these humanistic ideals, that's when we continue to prove ourselves wrong. Here, we get an insight into how Jehovah applies things. He looks at the intent of the heart. He looks at the heart. He looks at you and me inside. He looks at what's inside us. I have a question for us. I have a question for you, and I have a question for me. Do you know what's inside of you? Do you know? Because in Genesis chapter 6, the written narrative there declares that the men of the day were fixated on doing evil. Right? They were just fixated on doing evil. Well, you might say, well, what is evil? And it's not hard. Evil is anything you do that's not according to the instructions of God. Right? Not according to the way of God. See, God operates a certain way. And if you are not familiar with that way, then you do your own thing. Or you do the thing that somebody else suggests. And if that somebody else is not familiar with the way of Jehovah, then that person is going to suggest something they think is the way to do something. And then everybody doing the thing that way only to heap repercussions on themselves because the way they are doing things is not the way of Jehovah. Right? Jehovah he does things a way, in a certain way. He said, my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways. So we then have to examine our thoughts, and we have to examine our ways. If we do not do that, we end up in a heap of trouble. Simple. Because we think we're doing something right. It might be right according to our way. It might be can't say the word. It might be diabolically wrong because it's against his way. So we have to get his way perspective. That's what I'm teaching. That's what I strive to teach. His way perspective, not my way perspective, not your way perspective, not anybody else's way perspective. His way. Come up with him, go up to him, and look down like him. Look across like him. Look up like him. How does he see things? And he has explicitly said in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different cases, how he sees things. He sees things from the inside out, not from the outside in. He changes people from the inside out, not from the outside in. He could do from the outside in. It's not like he can't do that, but that's not his way. His way is from the inside out. Why? Because he wants your heart. The most important thing is your heart. So all the money in the world that you have, you could be just Jeff Bezos, be a billion, multi-trillionaire. God doesn't care. You could be a pauper sleeping on the side of the street with no money to your name. God is not interested. He is focused on what's in your heart. My suggestion is, if God is focused on what's in my heart, then I should try to focus on what's in my heart. Because if I focus on what's in my heart, then looking at what's in my heart could tell me a lot of things about myself. A lot of things that maybe I need to, you need to change that, you need to change that, you need to do something about that, you need to do something about this and that, you need to watch how you talk because you know you talk so, you need to watch what you do because you know you do so. See? And that's how we should be operating. But unfortunately, many people don't operate like that. Okay? Many people who speak on the big prophet on the wall, that tell a vision, many people who's in the news media, many people who in political heights of life and rulers and leaders and so on, they don't care about what God sees. They only care about what they think. See? Because guess what? And in this conversation with my friend, this is something I explained. If the people today, right? This is what I'm seeing. People today talk, they do things as if there is going to be no repercussions to what they do and say. People act like there is going to be no repercussions, or they don't care about the repercussions of what they do and say. And when you have those kinds of people in power, oh boy, we're going somewhere to happen bad. Hear what I'm saying to you? If people in power, if people who are in the sphere of influence, if people who are on the big prophet on the wall called television, if the people who speak on these platforms, they don't care or they have no inclination or idea or thought about the repercussions for what they do or say, this world is going to hell in a handbasket, as the old folks would say. And if you look out, you know, ergo, back to my original statement, where how things break my heart when I, listen to a little bit of the news. It just, oh man, it's scary. It's scary, the things people say, okay, about all kinds of stuff. They're talking about the vaccination, the COVID, they're talking about abortion now is a big thing. You know, people in the Congress, they put their hand in the Bible and they swear, this is my testimony, okay? And they say all kinds of different things. And I'm like, wow. Did you hear what you just said? Oh, anybody could get pregnant. Anybody, man, woman, child, boy, girl, doesn't matter. Really? Wow. Really? You saying that, huh? Bold. Just flat out bold face. They're saying it. Anybody could get pregnant. A man or a woman could get really? Wow. Wow. Where is God in that statement? Where is he? Is that his thought or is that your thought? And so people in different levels of community powers and different levels of influence saying again, it's not stupid. Here's what it is. It's ignorant at its premium. Okay? Things like that, people saying things like that is ignorance at its premium price. Okay? And so, if these people operate in a way that they don't care about repercussions, I'm going to say, this is how I feel. See, I'm not telling you how I feel. I'm telling you how God is seeing things, how God is interpreting things. Okay? What God is saying. God looks at the heart. He looks at what's in your heart. Okay? And there's some things here that we could go into, but let's go over to the Gospel of Matthew. And let's read some things there. Okay? Let's go Matthew 12. Right? Yeshua says some of the same things. Yeshua. Yeah. The Messiah. Jesus. It's Jesus alone. I don't care about nothing else. And all this stuff. Jesus. Woo, Jesus. Everything is Jesus. Okay. Hey, I'm with you. Jesus Messiah, I'm with you. He was earmarked. I'm with you. What did he say? Do you know what he said? Let's read, right? Matthew 12. Let's read some things that he said and say, oh, you talking about heart and people saying stuff and, God is love. He loves everybody. God just loves everybody. So everybody in God, people get this idea that God's stupid. That because he loved you, that means that gives you carte blanche. You could just go on the prophet on the wall and say anything, and you're going to be all right with him. You see what I'm saying? And we have this crazy idea that it doesn't matter what we say. It doesn't matter what we do, because Jesus paid it all. He paid it all. Yeah? Okay. Let's go and read what he says in Matthew chapter 12. We start at verse 1. That's not the optimum verse. That's not the verse we're going to hit at. But to give you some background, to give you some insight into the story here, it says, Matthew 12 and 1. At that time, Yeshua went on the Sabbath day through the grain fields, and his disciples were hungry and began to pluck heads of grain to eat. Right? See, this is where, you could get the church people, bring the church people in, and bring the not church people, bring them in and tell the story, and you could tell who's who, right? So, his disciples were hungry and began to pluck heads of grain and to eat. But the Pharisees, and I say that deliberately like that, but the Pharisees, the church people, when they saw it, said to him, "Behold, your disciples do what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." What is not lawful? They do what is not lawful to do. They do what is not lawful to do. So the Pharisees, if you read this sentence, give you the idea that they know what's lawful and what's not lawful, right? Because they're accusing the disciples of Yeshua that what they're doing is not lawful to do on the Sabbath day. So these are people who know what to do and what not to do. Know right from wrong. You see what I'm saying? They know. But Yeshua said to them, "Haven't you read what David did when he was hungry and those who were with him?" And if we know that story, David and his men, I think they were running from something. He was on the run and they were hungry. They were hungry. Okay? And David knew that there was bread in the temple. There was food in the temple. We're hungry. David knew there's food in the temple. So he took his men in the temple and he ate the showbread. And we know the law of the showbread. If we go in Leviticus, right? The showbread is holy. Only the priest is supposed to eat it, and so on and so on and so on. Now, David is not a priest. He's a king, but he's hungry. So, just to give you an idea of how God sees things, what does God look at, we said? He looks at the heart. He looks at the crux of the matter. He looks at the meat of things. He looks at the foundation of things. These are human beings. They're hungry. Listen, the people are hungry. So if you're hungry and the showbread is available for you to eat, is God going to punish you because you're hungry and you eat the showbread? No. Because he understands that you're hungry. He understands that. So even though he himself says, this is the instructions for the showbread, the premise is that he is hungry people. And we talk about an awesome God who is full of grace and mercy, and he will understand exactly what's the meat of the situation. And he could let things go. God, listen, do you know who you're serving? Do you know this God that we talk about? And here Yeshua is pointing out to them. Yeah, you quick, you pointing your finger and you say they're doing something that is unlawful. But David did the same thing. Why? Because he was in the same situation. They were hungry. It's okay if you're hungry and you go get something to eat and it's the Sabbath. It's okay. He ain't gonna chop your head off. God ain't gonna, oh, that's a strike. Bam! See? That's not the kind of God we serve. That's not the kind of God he is. This is not Jesus. This is Jehovah. And you can't separate the two of them. The two of them is one and the same, right? He said that. You said that. You think that. You believe that. That's what most people think and believe. So why are you trying to separate the two? Jesus is nice and he's so sweet. God in the Old Testament, oh, he's so hateful and destructive. He just want to kill. But we hear that a lot. We see preachers preaching that a lot. It's ridiculous. It's ignorance at its premium. You can't separate the two of them. He said it how many times in the gospel? Go read, people. We're looking at the heart of the matter. What's in your heart? Okay, so let's go down. Let's skip down. Let's skip down. Let's skip down. Let's go read 24. Let's go down to 24. We're getting closer. We're getting closer to the crux. Right? We're talking about matters of the heart. So I want to get down there to where it goes into heart things. Right? Everything he talks about is from the heart. Right? There are many verses prior to 24. I don't want to prolong the issue because we got other places to read from, right? He says in verse 24, but when the Pharisees heard of it, we was talking about no, let's not start there. Let's go down 25. Verse 25, it says, knowing their thoughts, Yeshua said to them, right? You could read the previous verses to bring yourself into the story. For time's sake, we're going to just go to 25 and read. Yeshua, knowing their thought. What did I say again? We have to begin to understand whatever we are thinking, whatever it's in us, we have to bring those things up and to think from his perspective. Here, it's giving you an insight. Just like Jehovah told Samuel, don't look at that. Listen, I rejected him. You think that because you see him and he look all tall and dark and handsome, that you're going to anoint him. No, son. I don't see as you see. You look at the outward. I look at the heart. I want you to begin to look at the heart of man, not at the outward appearance. Not because they have on a nice three-piece suit and they have a mic in front of them and there's millions of people they are talking to. That doesn't make the person a righteous person. Listen to what they're saying and see what they're saying, because what they're saying comes from a certain place. We're going to get into that. Here again, we are getting an insight into how God sees things. Here is what the first part of verse 25 says. Knowing their thoughts, Yeshua said, see, he knew what's on the inside of them. He knew what's on the inside of them. He said to them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. Every kingdom divided against themselves. If you are divided against you, is called a what? What does James call it on gosh, what's the word? I forgot. What's the word? Come on, you know what I'm talking about. What James say? A double-minded man. If you are a double-minded person, you in your own self, if you're a double-minded person, you can't stand. God will give you nothing. Why? Because you're double-minded. You're not focused. You're not thinking one way. You're double-minded. You're up and down. You're in and out with your thoughts. So you don't expect anything from God. That's what James says. So if you see yourself as one kingdom, right? And I'm breaking it down to this single individual kingdom called your body, yourself. If you're not one with your own thoughts and your own principles and your own ideals and your own lifestyle, then you're a double-minded person. And that person will get anything from God. And Yeshua is making the point that every kingdom that's divided against itself is not going to stand. It's going to be brought to desolation, he says. Every city or house divided against itself will not stand. It's a principle. Okay? It's a principle. And he says, if Satan cast out Satan, he's divided against himself. Well, we know Satan is null and void. He's going to be zilch. So maybe this is another way you could say this is, if Satan is casting out Satan, he is divided. He can't stand because he cannot. Who can stand against the will of God, of the Father? Who can stand? Right? And then he goes on to say in 27, if I by Beelzebub cast out demons, by whom do your children cast them out? Again, going back, the story is Jesus was out, casting demons and healing sick and all this kind of things. And the people who were in the know, the people who knew what you should do and what you shouldn't do, was saying that he is doing them things by the spirit of Beelzebub. Right? Which is Satan, the bad spirit, the bad side, the other side. I call him the other side. Right? So he's saying, well, wait a second. If I'm healing people, casting out demons, as you say, if I am doing these things by the spirit of the other side, then when you do them, what spirit are you using? The same spirit? Oh, so I'm doing the same thing that some of your people doing, And you telling me that I'm doing it the wrong way, but you doing it the right way. See, that's humans for you. That's a typical human being for you, right? God is always wrong. They always right. I'm just saying, people, we gotta fix that. We gotta fix that. Okay? Then he makes a remarkable statement here in verse 28, which I don't want to get into. He says, but if I, by the Spirit of God, cast out demons, then God's kingdom has come to you. See, that's what they don't want to recognize, right? Humanity, as it is, as it stands, they do not want to recognize God. That's the epitome of where when you hear them, this again, I says, scientists don't believe in God. Most scientists do not believe in God. So they're gonna refute anything pertaining to God, right? Anything in science, they're gonna refute the God idea in that. You know, creation, God created. They're gonna refute that. Healing, God, no, they're gonna refute that. Scientists think they are the epitome. They are the elite in the world. Because science is the knowledge, and they know so much stuff, right? That mankind on his own thinks they could solve all the problems of humanity. No, you cannot. No, stupid man, you cannot. No, foolish man, you cannot. There is a God who created this universe. He knows how to fix it more than you do. But you believe in you so much that you cast him aside. And you think you could do it. And that's what evil is. Evil is humanity doing things according to the way of humanity. That's evil at its premium. You want to set the levels. You want to set the standard. You want to say who's going to do this, who is a male and who is a female. No, we are all going to decide. You decide. No, look between your legs and let that tell you what you are. That's what I tell my sons. Whether you believe it or not, I don't care how you feel is not a determinative factor, because feelings change. You feel sad today, tomorrow something happened, you feel happy. You feel happy tomorrow, something happened, the next day you're sad, right? You feel sad, then you get moody, you're happy, you're sad, you're angry, somebody poke your finger in your eye, you get mad. So feelings, even though they are important, right? Feelings are like the oceans in the waters in the ocean. They are up and down, in and out. You can't lay any rule by them. Right? That's why I say love is not a feeling. Love is laid down. Okay? Even though if you love, you could have the emotional contact. But the emotional contact itself is not love. Okay? So, they didn't want to recognize what he was saying, that, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, the kingdom of God is at hand. They didn't want to recognize that. They didn't want to recognize the truth, the fact that he was healing people. That even Nicodemus in John chapter 3 says, even Nicodemus says, we know that nobody could do these things outside of God being with them. Nicodemus knew that, and he told Jesus that to his face. And they knew it, but they didn't want to admit that. No, this is man's world. We run things. We the gods up in here. And you're doing things that we don't approve of what you do. So we could determine what's right and what's wrong. That's the typical human thought. And it's evil at its premium. Because you think that there's nobody ruling over you. You think that there's no repercussions for your actions. You think that there's no repercussions for your words. You think that there is no repercussions. And even if you think that that there is repercussions, you don't care. I charge you better begin to care before it's too late. Okay? So, he goes on to say, but if I, by the Spirit of God, cast demons out, then God's kingdom or the kingdom of God has come. They don't want that. They don't want to admit that. See? Because they're the Pharisees. They're the Sadducees. They're the elite. They're the presidents. They're the Congress people. They're the senators. They're the leaders. They're the mayors and the leaders in community. They're the scientists. They're the FDA and whatever. They're the kings and queens in the rulership today. They don't want this God thing. No. Because that's taken away from who we are. That's taken away from us. Taken away from my kingdom. He goes on to say, we're still in Matthew 12. Matthew 12 and 29. Or, he goes on to say, how can you enter into the house of a strong man and plunder his goods unless you first bind the strong man? Then he will plunder his house, right? So if you think about the universe as God's house, as his creation, you can't bind up God. We human beings, we can't bind God up and plunder his house. Because if you bind him up, that means he has no say. He can do nothing. Right? That's like you go into another human's house next door, down the road, or in the next neighborhood, or in the next city or town, or what country, or whatever. You and your boys, and you break into my house, or the woman's house, or whoever's house it is, and you bind them on the bed. You stuff them out with paper or whatever, so they can't move, and then you thief all this stuff and go. See, they can't do nothing because they're there, but they can't do nothing because you done. See, you can't. This is God's place. You can't do that. And he continues. He, in verse 30, listen to these next few verses, people. He who is not with me is against me. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? He who is not with me is against me. Don't care who you are. If you're not with me heart to heart, if you don't see things the way I see things, if you don't know things, if you don't understand, if you don't want to understand things the way I understand things, if you don't want that, if that's not your desire, if you're not with me, you're against me. I don't care who you are. I don't care how much money you have. If you're poor as a dog and lying down on the side of the street and you're not with God, you are against him. If you're rich and have bodyguards and have security up the wazoo and nobody could touch you and you're just rich like crazy and you don't have God, you are against him. If you're not with me, you're against me. It doesn't matter who you are. God doesn't look at a man lying down on the side of the street and say, because he lying down on the side of the street, well, he's got to be with me. No. Because we don't know what's in that man's heart. Likewise, if you're on the top of the mountain, have all the money in the world, all the riches in the world, eat the finest of the fine, all the vegetables and organic everything and organic meats, and or you're vegan or whatever you are, but you just on top of the mountain right now. You're rich like crazy. And you don't have God. You're not with God. You don't entertain his thoughts. You don't see things the way he sees things. You're against him still. And everybody in between. It doesn't matter to him. The statement applies to everybody across the board. That's why in Leviticus, he admonishes people who are in places of judgment, who can judge different situations. Don't pity the person because they're poor. If you have to come to a judgment against that person, if that person is poor and they do something wrong, they do something wrong. Wrong is wrong and right is right. And just the same way, don't let the person who is rich influence you in making a judgment against them. Because they're so rich and they do something wrong, your judgment is, well, they're rich, they could give me some money, so I have to go easy on them. No. That's instructions for people who sit in positions of judgment, and who, whether you're a judge, a magistrate, a president, a prime minister, it doesn't matter. Whether you're a boss, you're a HR manager, it doesn't matter. If you adjudicating in a place where you have to make a judgment on two different things, you have to make a right judgment. How would you make a right judgment if you don't care about God? If you don't care about the repercussions of your judgment? How would you judge righteously then? God demands righteous judgment. Yeshua said in the gospel, he told the Pharisees and the Sadducees, yeah, you tithe your mint and your cumin, but you know what you neglect? The weightier things of the law, the weightier things of the instructions is justice and mercy. You neglect the justice because you're a priest, you're operating in a certain realm of influence. It's easy to bribe you. Where was I? He says in verse 30, we Matthew 12 and 30, he who is not with me is against me. And he who doesn't gather with me scatters. He's saying the same thing in a different way. Okay? That's Hebrew. You see, we do it in English too, but we don't recognize that. That's a Hebrew thing right there. Say the same thing in different ways. Like I say, God's voice, his commandments, his laws, his statutes, his instructions, all of these things, he's saying the same thing in different ways. If you don't obey my voice, it's the same thing as saying you don't obey my commandments. It's the same thing, just in a different way. Okay? We get now to the crux. Verse 31, he says, therefore I tell you, every sin and blasphemy will be forgiven man, but sin and blasphemy against the Spirit will not be forgiven. Right? We don't want to go into that. We ain't touching that. Whoever speaks a word against the Son of Man, it will be forgiven of him. But whoever speaks a word against the Holy Spirit, that will not be forgiven of, either in this age or in the age to come. Right? We getting down to the crux of the heart of the matter. We getting down to the matters of the heart. What's matters of the heart? Here's what the matter of the heart is. Yeshua says, verse 33, either you make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree corrupt and its fruit corrupt, because the tree is known by its fruit. So if you speak lies in the English world, if you lie, what are you called? A liar. If you rob and steal and cheat, you are called a thief or a robber or a cheater. right? It's either you make the tree good or and its fruit good, or you make the tree corrupt and its fruit will be corrupt, because a tree is known by its fruit. If you're driving on the road, down the roadside, and you see oranges hanging from a green leafy structure, which is called a tree, what would you think? That's an orange tree. Simple. If you're from where I'm from and you have a tree in your backyard and it has mangoes on the tree is called a mango tree. You can't have apples growing on a mango tree. That's impossible. You cannot have guavas growing on an orange tree. A tree is known by its fruit. So if you say things that's not in the realm of the way of God, in the thinking of God, you are an ungodly person if you say those things. Especially if you keep saying them. I'm not talking about you say something and then you realize what you said, because you know God, and you goes, whoop. God say, hey, that what you just said that ain't me. And then you regurgitate that and you say, wait, I was wrong. That's different. I'm talking about you saying the same thing that's ungodly over and over. You following people that's ungodly over and over. What the old folks used to say back in the day? Birds of a feather flock together. You remember Yeshua? They accused him of being a sinner. Why? Because he was hanging out with sinners. Now, that's different. If you hanging out with people, but your operation is the same, they can only accuse you of hanging out with that person. But if they hear what you're saying and see the things you're doing, they can't put you in the same bracket as people who are doing something different, right? So that's different. The heart of the matter is different. We are talking about people who perpetrate a certain lifestyle by what they say, by what they do, by what they support, by what they put their weight behind, right? Like all of you all who like to follow the colorful flag and the multi-letter gender people. You do that, you perpetrate that, you stand behind that. Guess what? You are perpetrating evil. That's against the way of God, the perception of God, the principle of it's against God. You can't be on that side of the fence and talk about you love God. You could say that, but that ain't true. You're lying. Yeshua says, either make the tree good and the fruit's going to be good, or you make the tree corrupt or evil and the fruit is going to be corrupt or evil. In Revelation, he said it this way. He said, I would prefer if you were hot or if you were cold. Make a choice. Make a choice. James says, a double-minded man is unstable. You will get nothing from God. So if God trying to save you, if he's trying to deliver you, if he's trying to help you, and you bouncing back and forth, guess what? He will not. He cannot. But if you decide, listen, I ain't for God at all. I'm going all the way cold. I am cold like dog nose, as the old folks would say. God can reach over there. Because his hand ain't short, bro. Sis, his hand ain't short at all. God's hand is not short that he cannot save. Neither is his hair heavy that he cannot hear. But he wants you to make up your mind. Choose a side. And based on what I'm hearing on the Prophet on the Wall, the television, from all kinds of prominent people, we going to hell in a handbasket. I'm telling you. It's bad out there. The kind of things that people are propagating, the kind of things that people are supporting, the kind of things that people are trying to bring to fruition. We are not serious about God. We can't be. Not based on what is going on out there. Guess what? As heavy as my heart is, and as heartbroken as I am when I hear these things, all I could say is these things, it's the fulfillment of prophecy. It is the fulfillment. God had spoken about these things. There will be a generation who doesn't know God. They don't want to know God. They don't care anything about God. Verse 34. So he says in verse 33, make the tree good, so the fruit will be good. Make the tree evil, so the fruit will be evil. You know, you can't have it both ways, right? Verse 34, he says, listen to what he says in verse 34. You offspring of vipers. In another version, he calls them a generation of vipers. How can you, being evil, speak good things? So, here's what he's saying. I want you to get it clear. I'm not saying it. I'm agreeing with what he is saying. You either make the tree good so that the fruit will be good, or you make the tree evil so that your fruit could be evil. Then he says, you are a generation of vipers. How can you, being evil, speak good things? You accusing me of casting out devils by the spirit of Beelzebub. That's an evil thing. You think you know all the good things. You charging my disciples for not doing that which is lawful on the Sabbath, because without realizing that their people are hungry. Oh no, you went, see, hunger to have no, that doesn't sway you left or right. You are so adamant about being strict by the law that you don't even care that the people hungry. And you lying to yourself because you think you care about the law, but you do really and truly do not care. Because I know what's in your heart. You only saying that because you're trying to show yourself to be prominent. You're trying to show yourself to be a spiritual person when you know that you're not spiritual. You're a viper. You're a generation of vipers is what he called them. How can you evil, how can you speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart, what's in there, your mouth speaks. You want to know where somebody is spiritually? You want to know you want to know where God is in somebody's life? Listen to what they say. Pay attention to what they are saying. And not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it, and all the things that are connected with what they're saying. Are they saying it? Are they saying it cold? Are they saying it there's no emotion, no passion? There is no conviction in what they're saying. People saying all kinds of stuff. Man is woman, woman is man. Man and woman is all the same. Man could get pregnant, woman could get pregnant, anybody could get... People say all kinds of ignorant things. Verse 35. He says, a good man out of a good treasure in his heart bring out good things. An evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bring out evil things. These are the words of Yeshua, the Messiah. These are the things that is what he is looking at. A good person, a good man, will bring out good things out of his mouth because he has good in his heart. An evil man will bring out evil things out of what evil he has in his heart. In another place, he says, a good tree cannot produce evil fruit. Neither can an evil tree produce good fruit. And I want to reiterate what I said some time ago. There are many evil people out there trying to produce good things. Listen to what I'm saying. There are countless evil people out there trying to produce good things. And it's not possible. What they are trying to produce are standards and things that they perceive it's good. And I'm always reminded of the tragedy in that TV series, Game of Thrones, where you have Miss Daenerys, who thinks she's the queen, she thinks she's the right ruler, have all the credentials for it. She is the expert. She knows, she wants to do good. She wants to do good, but she has not dealt with the evil that's in her heart. And throughout the series, she's purporting to be a good queen and have people following her and making tough decisions, all for the good. And she met somebody who is better than her at being good. This person is not perfect, but John, in the character on that TV series, she met him and he is better than her in terms of his principles, in terms of how he sees things. And he's trying to convince her not to burn down, when she got to a place where she could make a real good decision or the best good decision. She goes bonkers. Remember the scene? And she burns down whatever the Nuts Landing, King's Landing, Harry's Landing, whatever landing it was. She ride the dragon and man, she created havoc. She killed people like crazy, innocent, guilty, didn't matter to her. All that mattered to her was satisfying that inner desire, that hate, that hatred, whatever it was, that evil that was burning her inside. And the end, the final culmination of her life was her telling John that she know what good is. That both she and him, who she sees as a good person, both of them could teach everybody else what good is. And he says, but how do we know? he understands he's an honorable person, a good person, but even in his goodness, he is saying, I'm really not that in a place where I could determine what's good and what's not good. So even he himself is looking from a place of perception that I don't think I could determine what good is. I have to pull, the Proverbs say, in a multitude of counsel, there is safety. So he is seeing himself as being able to tap resources to come up with what's good and what's right. She's saying, me and you are the two resources. We could teach people what good is and end up losing her life. Simply because she failed to recognize that, wait a second, if you don't recognize that little itch in you that's scratching you, that little itch could be transformed into a blaze, into a fiery furnace. He says, Yeshua says, a good man out of his good treasure, right? In his heart brings out good things. And an evil man out of his evil treasures of his heart bringeth forth evil things. In Matthew 7:18 says, a good tree cannot produce evil fruit, and an evil tree cannot produce good fruit. Matthew 7:12. Oh, did I get that right? 7:18, sorry. Other references. Matthew 7:17 says, even so, every good tree produces good fruit, but every corrupt tree produces evil fruit. Every evil tree produces, see what I'm saying? You can't crisscross. You can't crossbreed a good tree with an evil tree. You can't crossbreed a good fruit with an evil fruit. They can't. No, that's humanistic in its ideology. That's humanistic in its philosophy. That's humanistic in its foundation. That it's evil at its premium. Yet still, we do it. We attempt to do it, and we insist on trying to do it because we just want to listen to each other. Nobody wants to listen to what God has to say about the abortion issue. Nobody wants to listen to what God has to say about the male-female issue. Nobody wants to listen to what God has to say about anything because people think they rule, they are in charge. We control everything. And especially those people who are in positions of influence, financially optimum positions, positions of political influence, positions of leadership influence, positions of scientific influence, positions of all kinds of influence. The majority of those people are people who pushing these issues because they don't want to hear nothing about what God has to say about these issues. We are in the position we are in as a human race, as a human being, as human people, because we are the ones who don't want to perceive properly. How do I close this session? There's so much to say. But let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to the beginning. After the quote-unquote fall of man, after man first disobeyed, see, we have this premonition to be disobedient. We have this mindset that we just insist on not doing what we are supposed to do, not listening to God. We somehow in our minds, we don't want to listen. We insist on doing things the way we want to do things. Genesis chapter 4, beginning at verse 1. And the man knew Havah, his wife. Adam knew Eve. And she conceived and gave birth to Cain. And she said, I have gotten a man with Jehovah's help. She gave birth again to Cain's brother Abel. Abel was a keeper of the sheep. Now remember, isn't it funny that she didn't say anything about what God did in this case? She just gave birth to Cain's brother Abel. And typically in the Hebrew construct, somebody gets their name because of an event, because of something happening. That's how they get the name. Cain's got his name because she says that she got help from Jehovah. That's okay. That's why I'm thinking in the Hebrew construct, Cain's name has something to do with help of Jehovah. Okay? Matter of fact, why don't we do this? Let's just do a quick little word study and see what Cain means. Cain means he's the eldest son of Adam and Eve, the first murderer. Oh gosh. Oh man. And it's a play on according to the Bronx Briggs here, it says that it's a play on the affinity to kana, to get or to acquire or to create. It's a play on the creative process, if you will, right? It's a play on the word Cain, kana, and kana is that creativity, that ability to create, to procreate, to process, or to possess. Okay, we didn't want to get too deep into that, right? Because that's not why I got there. That's not why I came there. I'm just reading through the story. But it's interesting in that when you go to Abel, there's no analogy as to his name. And there is no indication that he was named Abel because of some incident or because of some action. And because I did Cain, let's do Abel. And Abel and Habel is breath, right? The second son of Adam and Eve, killed by his brother. It's the same as Hebrew word 1892. 1892, what year was that? It's the same as a vapor or breath, right? And the root is habal, to act emptily, become vain, to be vain. You figure out what all of that in essence means. I'm not going to That's not the reason why I went to Genesis 4. So I'm not, I'm just bringing that up because, as I said, Hebraically, the construct is, I'm given, I laugh, so my son's name is Laughter. Isaac, like that. You see what I'm saying? I look peaceful, so my name will have to do with that. You know what I'm saying? I'm thanking God, I'm praising God, so my name has to do with praising God. Judah, that kind of thing, right? With Cain, we have the Hebrew construct. With Abel, we don't have any kind of construct. He's a keeper of the sheep. Maybe that's the construct. I don't know. Didn't want to get into that. Okay? But we read, she gave birth to Abel. Abel was a keeper of the sheep. Cain was a tiller of the ground. Again, I like to deal a lot with personality types. I don't want to get into that. Maybe this has something to do with their personality, their mindset, if you will, the matters of their heart, if you will. Okay? As time passed, Cain brought an offering to Jehovah. He first, right? Because it's written about him first, so you get the idea that he's the first one to bring an offering to Jehovah from the ground. Okay? Where did he get that idea from? We're not going into that. Verse 4, Abel also brought an offering of the firstborn of his flock and of its fat. Right? So we talked about that in a subsequent teaching, right? Don't want to go into that. Jehovah, however, respected Abel and his offering, but he didn't respect Cain and his offering. Cain was very angry. And the expression on his face fell. Or, better put, it showed on his face. He was angry, and that anger was seen, was shown. Remember, God said, don't look at his face. Don't look at his outward. But your outward also can tell your inward. Okay? In this case, is what's happening here. Okay, so again, we just dealing with that. Okay, Cain was very angry, and the expression on his face told the story. Right? Guess what? Guess who knows? Because remember, what's inside is going to come out. Sooner or later, it's going to come out. Okay? What's inside of you, whether it's good or evil, sooner or later, it will come out. It's got to. It can't stay in there. You can't bottle that thing in there. You cannot. You can't bottle up in. Cain couldn't. His anger showed outwardly. Right? What are we talking about? Matters of the heart. Things you think God ain't seen, God is looking at. He ain't looking at you, he looking through you. And the evil he's seen in you, he's seen it expressing outwardly. Or the good he's seen in you, he's seen you express it outwardly. Or the evil he's seen in you, you trying to camouflage it with the good. You're trying to camouflage, trying to be nice and sweet and happy. And somebody could see it. Somebody could look past that. Only he can. And see, oh man, you're trying to hide that evil in you. Right? Or the good in you, you trying to camouflage it by doing evil. You're a gangster. You shooting and killing people and all kinds of stuff. You robbing people. You just trying to be a bad boy. Because you think that's how you're going to survive. That's how you will live. But the good in you, God is seeing it. So it's the same way. It goes both ways, right? And verse 6. And Jehovah said to Cain, simple question. Why are you angry, bruh? Bruh, why are you angry? Why has the expression of your face fallen? Why are you down? Why is your expression down? All right, you could tell when people are angry. Okay? When people anger is one of the hardest things to hide. Right? It's one of the very hardest things to hide. It's hard to hide it. It shows, right? So God says, why are you angry? Why has the expression of your face fallen? And I want us to pay particular attention to this question, because the question is important. And sometimes, as I've said before, the question is more important than the answer. If we could think about the question, if we could just focus on the question sometimes, things happen, right? The answer comes, and not just the answer, but instructions to follow and change, to follow the instructions on how to change or how to bring about. You see what I'm saying? The question sometimes it's so important. It's like one of my favorite movies, The Matrix. In Morpheus, I think there's a part somebody says is the question that drives us. It's the question that drives us. Listen to the question that God asks. First, why are you angry? Why is the expression of your face fallen? Then the next question is, if you do well, won't the expression on your face be different? If you did well, if you did good, won't you feel it inside? When you do something good, don't you feel it? Doesn't the good that you do say to your countenance, man, I feel good. I did a good deed. Wow. So everything from the inside speaks to your external, and it causes you to show externally. So inadvertently, Jehovah is questioning his motive, questioning what's going on the inside of him. But he's asked, if you had done well, if you think, Cain, that you did something good, won't that affect your countenance? And then, retrospectively, he reverses the situation and says, if you don't do well, or if you didn't do good, if you think you didn't do good, maybe you ought to think about what you did and go and re-examine how you did it and why you did it and all these things, and then you will get some answers. And then he says, sin, transgression of the instruction. That's what sin is. Going against the grain, if you will. That's what sin is. Going against God. Remember, doing things the way you think it should be done. Not the way God wants it done. The way you think it should be done. Thinking things the way you think it should be thought. Those kinds of things. That's what sin is. That's what evil is. And it starts inside. He said, sin is crouching at the door and it's ready to escape, or it's ready to pounce, or it's ready to come out. Okay, the sin is ready to show itself. Its desire is for you. In other words, sin wants to lay hold of you. Sin wants you to act upon it in a certain way. Sin wants you to do its bidding. Right? Isn't that nice and juicy right there? Isn't that nice and juicy right there for us to think about? Sin wants you to do its bidding. He says, listen to these words. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words. It's the 7 most powerful words in the universe. And it's words that God has put on a plate a silver platter, if you will, a golden platter, if you will, and says, yo, this is up to you, bro. I'm just telling you like it is. Sin wants you to do what it wants you to do. But you are to rule over it. And some translations say, but you can rule over it. 7 words. But you have power over it. 7 words. You have power over sin. This is in Genesis. Today, we talk about power over sin only from the idea that Yeshua, only from the idea that the Holy Spirit. God is telling Cain in the garden. This is way in Genesis 4. Sin is crouching at your door. But Cain, you have authority to rule over sin. Back in Genesis 4? Really? I want you to think about that. What's in your heart? Today we have spoken about matters of the heart. Things pertaining to heart. What's in your heart? What's in your mind? What's in your thoughts? The thing you think about. No wonder why Paul says, think about the good things, the weightier things. But what did he say? But the pleasant things. Focus on those things. I can't remember exactly the verse and where it is. Is in Philippians or one of them letters. Is your heart filled with the fruit of the Spirit? Love, peace, joy, perseverance, self-control. Are those things perpetually in your mind? Or is your mind perpetually on doing what you want to do? Doing things your way or the way somebody else thinks it should be, that's not even close to what God is trying to say. Where is God in your heart? Do you think of him? Do you even believe him? Do you want to know him? Do you even know him? Does it matter that you do or you don't? Turn with me to Numbers chapter 6 in closing. We always like to close with this verse, with these few verses in Numbers chapter 6. Because they're important. It's Jehovah giving his Torah about how his priest, his high priest, is supposed to put his name on his people. And that when he looks and sees his name on people, the blessing comes on those people that carry his name. Solomon says it in another way. It's kind of the same. He says, if my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves. See, God is telling Solomon, he's responding to Solomon's prayer in 2 Chronicles 7 and 14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, Then I will hear from heaven. Then I will heal their land. You know, it's kind of like saying the same thing, these words. And in Numbers 6, Jehovah is expressly given instructions, or his Torah about his name. And he says as follows. Numbers 6 and verse 22 and onwards says these words. And Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Aaron and to his sons, saying, this is how you shall bless the children of Israel. You shall tell them, Jehovah bless you and keep you. Jehovah make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Jehovah lift up his countenance towards you and give you peace. So they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. I hope that you were blessed by something you have heard. I hope that something that was said during these few hours would have touched something in you and would have caused you to perceive things differently. Be blessed. Shavua Tov. Shalom. Peace be unto you. Adieu. Buenos dias, buenas noches, buenas tardes. Until next time, peace.